So in my folder for this class, here's my place here, and I have dragged in the folder of the week, and there are two handouts there. One are the instructions for the assignment for the week, the landscape, and I'm just going to click start when I'm opening things up in Acrobat. Acrobat likes when you click start. This is the other handout here that's called raster versus vector. So one is your instructions, one is your raster versus vector handout. This is an example of a student project who I had in a Photoshop class that I teach at night at Orange Coast College. I do teach Photoshop there. And I have exported this image at two different resolutions. Can anyone tell me which one is the higher resolution? The one on the left or the one on the right?
The right.
Yes, good eye. The pixels in the one on the right are a lot finer. There are more pixels packed per inch. 300 pixels per inch is what the image on the right is set up for. And on the left, it's set up for screen resolution. So the pixels are larger, chunkier. There are less pixels per inch. It's 72 pixels per inch. As I start zooming in, you can really start to see that difference more. You can see the chunky pixels on the left and the finer pixels on the right. Let me see. Lower resolution on the left here. Pixels get really, really big in the 72 pixel per inch image. I'm looking at it at 1600 now. 1600% magnified, 3200, gigantic pixels. Let's see on the right what it looks like at those magnifications. So zooming in to 1200, starting to see pixels a little bit. 1600, the pixels are still pretty fine. 2400 and 3200. Finer pixels, right? They're not gigantic boxes, but you can see pixels. So either way, the image is made of pixels, so eventually you'll lose resolution if you scale it up. But the image that's set for 300 pixels per inch is going to be better for printing, and the image that's set for 72 pixels per inch is going to be better just for screen viewing, optimized for viewing on the web or on a mobile device. So this is just information about raster images, images made of pixels, which are bits of data that are mapped to a grid of rows and columns. And as you saw, the size of the individual pixels will get larger or smaller as the image is scaled. These images are resolution dependent. So like we mentioned earlier, when you scale up an image that's made of pixels, that's a raster image, you will lose resolution. The image will become pixelated. Fewer or larger pixels per inch equals less data equals less detail. More or smaller pixels per inch equals more data equals more detail. The more pixels, the higher the quality, but that also means the larger the file size. What are some raster? I'm gonna hide it here. What you guys can look if you want. But what are some raster image file types that you know of? What kinds of images do you download off the internet? JPEG, right?
PNG.
PNG, those are the most common, most current probably. There's also TIFF. There's also, from back in the day, BMP was one of the original ones. So this image was a Photoshop creation, and when you're working with photos, you're working in pixels primarily. Then down here, the next page of this handout introduces you to what vector-based artwork is all about. the artwork that I put here in this PDF on the right side is vector based. This diagram is a diagram that shows the underlying structure of a vector, which we call a path, which is made up of points and line segments. And these are the points that are just recalculated. The paths and the placement of the points are where all the mathematical data is that gets recalculated when you scale the image up. So like I said, if you design in vectors, if you design a little tiny logo for a business card, and then you decide to go big with that business billboard size, no problem, because as you scale your logo up, over here, this diagram is actually raster, so you'll see the pixels right away as I'm zooming in. But the artwork over here on the side is vector based. So every time I scale up and zoom in, everything recalculates and the artwork becomes crisp and clean again. So that's the beauty of vector-based artwork. It's gonna stay very precise and crisp and clean and be resolution independent. And that's what we're gonna be starting today, is working with the shape tools to create shapes that you'll be able to assign fill colors to, like solid colors, like what you're seeing in some of these shapes, or you see any shapes that are filled with more than one color. What do we call those? Where colors are blending into each other. Starts with a G. Gradient. Gradient, that's right. So this is a radial gradient in this funny looking sun here. And in the background, the sky's got like a linear gradient. You'll be able to assign, if you want an outline color, we call outline strokes in Illustrator. Some of these shapes have outlines on them. And we've also got effects that we can apply on our shapes, on our artwork. You see any effects here that you could name? What do you think is an effect? The shadow, yes, shadow and the glow. Very good, you guys spotted the effect. So this diagram here is showing what the paths are made up of, and we'll be using the shape tools, so you just kind of click and drag to draw out shapes. Later we're going to learn the pen tool and become very and practice it and become proficient and even master the pen tool, so that you can draw precisely whatever shape comes to your mind's eye, and you can create shapes with straight lines and corners, straight lines meeting corners, and leading out to curved lines, smooth curves. All different shapes and lines can be created with the tools in Illustrator to create these paths that then can be given all kinds of color and design form, color and styles and effects and textures. But the underlying structure is the path. It's like the skeleton of the vector, and it's what gets recalculated. The vectors are created by mathematical formulas. As the points are rearranged, the mathematical data is recalculated and the path is updated. So vector-based artwork is resolution independent, and these are some of the file types. I need to update this handout because I had SVG is another big one for a vector file type that we're going to be looking at, but mainly you'll find vectors in the native application files that are applications that you use to create vectors, like the Illustrator file or the InDesign files. And PDFs also preserve vectors as well. And these are some vector tools. And yeah, this is an older handout. I'm going to replace this one. I apologize for that. These icons are the older looking icons for the the vector tools, and I have a handout that I'm going to be giving you that's going to have the newer tool icons, and I'm going to go over that in detail, but you can just look at these as an overview of vector tools that we're going to be starting with today. If you want to look at this, that's up to you, or you can wait for the newer handout. And this is the pen tool that we're going to be mastering later on in the course. But mainly I just wanted you to understand the difference between raster images and vector images. And on that note, let's dive right into Illustrator. Here we go. If you click on Illustrator, does everyone have their Adobe account set up so you can get in smoothly? Very good. If not, I'll give you a few more minutes while I show some examples of work for this assignment. So I'm going to open up my examples. Illustrator. Examples, let's see. So this one, it's in PDF format. You can save your Illustrator file at the end as a PDF, but mainly you should be working on your file as an Illustrator file, a .ai file. This is an example of work done by a student who took this class for this assignment. I really like the attention to the lighting at the time of day, the sunset, where where some things will be in silhouette, like the cacti here. Each cactus is in silhouette, and the hills, and then the layers creating a sense of foreground, midground, and background, right? You get a sense of depth when you look at this, right? And when I zoom in, this is all vectors, so everything is going to stay crisp and clean and precise as it was created. All the lines are going to stay nice and crisp and clean. No pixels here. The screen is a little bit there's some screen glitches going on here that I'm seeing, but that's not anything to do with his artwork. It has to do with the computer, the RAM. Okay, but we have good RAM here, so we should be fine. Okay, let me just kind of find something else here. Another PDF. You can go in lots of different directions with the style that you go in. I mean, just a tree on the land. It doesn't have to have a very long sense of depth. This still creates a level of depth, and it's a cute design. Here's another one. This one's an Illustrator file, so it's opening up into Illustrator. If you save your work as a PDF, then it will crop off the edges nice and neatly for you. So now I'm in Illustrator. I'm going to just clean up my workspace. So I'm going to go to Window, Workspace, and Reset Essentials. And I'm going to zoom out. I use Command minus to zoom out and Command plus to zoom in a lot when I'm in Illustrator. And I use the space bar to toggle into the hand tool. So I hold the space bar and then I click and drag to move around. So what you're seeing here in Illustrator is the toolbar, obviously the work right here on an artboard. And I'm going to say remind me later there. And then you should have some essential panels on the side here, properties panel, a layers panel. Libraries we don't really use too much in our class. And you see the artwork on the artboard. For this week, you don't have to worry too much about if anything hangs off the edges in the gray area. The gray area we call the pasteboard. And you could have extra shapes out there that you're just kind of testing out on the outside of the artboard, but I'll be looking at what's inside as your composition. And after you're done, if you go File and you choose Save As, you can make a PDF version to turn in by going to format and changing it to PDF. But I don't recommend making a PDF until the very end. If you want to turn in a PDF, you can turn in a PDF instead of the Illustrator file if you want, and you get full credit. Or you could just turn in the Illustrator file. Either way, and I'm not grading anyone down for having stuff hanging off the edges, because next week is when I really get into how to cut vectors, how to splice them and dice them and all that good stuff. So if you want to just hang stuff off the edges, that's fine. And then when you save it as a PDF, then you would see it when you open it in Acrobat. You don't see what's hanging off the edges unless if I open this one in Illustrator, like I could just drag this file down to the Illustrator icon, and we'll see if anything's hanging. Then you can see what's hanging off the edges on it. And this is a PDF open in Illustrator. I don't recommend working on a PDF in Illustrator, at least not for too long, because the compatibility of PDF in Illustrator is not as good as the compatibility of working on this AI file, for example. The .ai file, you should be working on the file most of the time in Illustrator as a .ai file, and then in the end save a PDF if you want to have one that's for presentational purposes, and if you want to turn in a PDF, you can turn in a PDF. The PDF's not going to get you the extra credit though. If you want to make a raster version, then you go File, Export, and choose from these options, and that will give you options to make a raster file from your vector. Because right now we're looking at this as vectors, and I can zoom in and everything stays. And by the way, I just chose the zoom tool to zoom in now. Because you can use Command plus or Command minus to zoom out. You can also use the zoom tool and click, click, click with it. Or some people like to click and drag down in a diagonal, or click and drag up in a diagonal with the zoom tool. Or you can hold Option, and it'll turn it into a minus, from plus to minus, so that you can zoom out that way. But it's very easy in Illustrator to go to kind of get lost in left field, and then you don't know where your document is, and you feel like you need a GPS to find it, and then you go to your space bar and you're clicking and dragging, and you're like, where is it? I'm lost from my document. I zoomed out in left field and I don't know where I am. That happened to me when I was new to Illustrator. If that happens to you, just go to View drop down, and there are some options here. Fit Artboard and Window, Fit All in Window. Fit Artboard and Window, you could try to remember it's Command 0 is the keyboard shortcut you could use. Or you can click Fit Artboard and Window, and you're back. You got your document back. So it's kind of like Dorothy clicking her heels 3 times and saying there's no place like home, and you're back. So just remember, Fit Artboard and Window is like there's no place like home, and you're back. You're safe. So that's just a little bit about navigating your workspace. And after you're done designing, I'm going to be showing you how you can get your extra credit by going to File, Export, and making the raster version of this. And I did ask, does anyone have any more ideas on why you would want to have a raster version of this? Why not just have the Illustrator or the PDF version that's going to retain the vector quality? So when you could zoom in or you can scale it up and you never lose resolution. Are there any times when you need a raster version besides we got a good idea, sometimes editing in Photoshop, you might want pixel-based art in there.
You want to use it for social media?
Social media, very good. If you wanted to post this and say, hey, this is what I just finished creating in Illustrator. And it's because for the web, for websites, social media, it's going to work a lot better with It's in some cases it's not going to work at all if you posted an Illustrator file. It's just a file. People aren't going to see it displayed on the web unless it's a raster image. Any other ideas of when you might need a raster image from your artwork? From the artwork that you create in Illustrator? What about if you're a web designer? If you're a web designer and you're designing a website, you need all the images you create in vectors need to be rasterized for the web. And the same thing goes if you're designing for film and television, or if you're designing for an app. Everything needs to be turned into pixels to go into app design, film and television. Everything turns into pixels. Although with Adobe, if you're for film and television, they have such a seamless workflow that you can just import the native Illustrator file right into your video editing software, Premiere or After Effects, to animate it. But the application itself is going to automatically rasterize your images. So as soon as you start working with it in a video application, it's going to turn everything into pixels for you. So let's get going. Let's dive right in, right? You probably saw enough examples today. Let's just go. We're in Illustrator, so let's just go. We don't have a lot of time now. We're running out of time. So I'll be demonstrating more tomorrow. So don't worry. We've got a whole week to do this. But if you want to get started and start a file in Illustrator, just go ahead and go File, New, or Command N. And let's do this as if we're doing this for print. So we could potentially print it out and put it up on the wall. So you choose Print as your preset. And then letter size. Let's choose letter size. That's the size that you could print off a desktop printer, 8.5 by 11. Let's name this according to the assignment instructions. We're going to name it your last name, followed by your first initial, dash, let's see, the assignment instructions, landscape instructions, which are also on Canvas, last name, first initial, dash, landscape. And this should be an AI file. You don't have to put .ai because it'll automatically put .ai. Landscape, and then the width and the height is right now in points. If you like to think in inches, you can always switch points to inches. And you can see that letter size is 8.5 by 11. And you can set the orientation. Orientation does not have to be landscape just because we're making a landscape. It could be portrait, but I'm going to switch mine to landscape, so it switches the width to be wider than the height. And everything else you can just leave the default and just click Create. Then we have our document started. And then to be sure that you have it saved, you go File, because it's not saved anywhere yet. Then you want to go File, Save. And it's going to give you the Save As dialog box. And you're going to definitely want to save it in a safe place. So not in Documents, right? So go, not in this Favorites area. It's not our favorite area. Go to Documents area. That's the only safe place here at school. And then go to your folder for the class. And click one single click when you're in column view. I'm in column view right now. So I'm going to single click on my intro third quarter folder here. And just save it anywhere in there. So just a single click on Documents area, a single click on your folder for the class. The format here at the bottom should say Adobe Illustrator AI. So that'll automatically tack on that .ai extension that you're saving an Illustrator file, and it's going to go into your folder for the class just like that. Just click Save and then accept the Illustrator options as is. Just click OK. And we can get started. So we can get started with the toolbar here. This is the basic toolbar. if I go up to the top little arrows, I can click on it to get 2 columns. And tomorrow I'll get us going on the advanced toolbar, but we'll start basic today. So on the basic toolbar, we have the selection tools at the top, pen tools next for freeform drawing, but we're not going to be using pen tools. We're going to be focusing on the shape tools here. There's the rectangle tool. If you click and hold on that, you'll see shape tools. You'll see rectangle, ellipse, polygon, star. And actually, I do want to switch to advanced because I don't want you to use lines yet. We can use stroke outlines, but let's avoid using lines. So the advanced toolbar gives you the better layout that has the classic tools the way that I like them. So I'm going to have you guys change your toolbar. If you hover over window or click on window and then come down and hover over toolbars, switch to advanced, and then we'll see what we have here. We've got more tools, more fun tools to play with. Don't let it overwhelm you that there are a lot more tools because they are fun tools. We're going to get to all of them, or almost all of them. We're going to click on, I like to click on these arrows here because I like the 2 column. It gives me more visibility down here to see my fill and my stroke controls. And if we go down to the rectangle tool, this is where all the shapes are. There's no tool called shape tools. There's shaper under here, but we're not going to play with shaper yet. You can click and hold on the rectangle tool and you'll see all the shapes. And at the bottom, instead of the line tool, you have the flare tool, which is not really a shape tool. It's a lighting effect. You could use it to blend it with the colors in the shapes that you assign to the shapes. But if we go then to the tear off, you can click on that and then you have a floating panel. Just gives you easier access to all the shapes. So you can start by taking the rectangle and clicking and dragging it. See how that works? There's a rounded rectangle. It gives you some more shapes to work with the advanced toolbar. So there's a rounded rectangle. Click and drag that out. There's ellipse. Click and drag that. Switch to polygon. So just practice dragging out shapes for now. Star, drag, just clicking and dragging. And then switch to the selection tool. And then select each shape and, move it somewhere. Click on a shape to select it. You can scale the shape by hovering right on top with the selection tool, hovering right on top of a bounding box handle. You can scale the shape out like that. You can, if you hover outside of the bounding box handle, you can see, what do you think this little icon means? When I'm outside of the corner, I have a rounded double-sided arrow. That means I can click and drag to do what? What am I doing? Rotate it. You can rotate shapes. You can assign colors. You can start assigning colors. A quick way to assign colors is using your properties. I know you guys have an annoying blue bubble that I've been trying to get our IT to fix, but if you can drag this down, then you can get away from that bubble and you can see your properties and layers here, but we'll just stay with properties. And then you can click on the fill icon when you have a shape selected. Click on fill and you'll see a pop out with different colors. These are swatch colors. You can click to assign fill colors. Click on the star. Click to pop out the colors. Give it a fill color. If you want to change the outline color, that's the stroke. So you can click on the little stroke icon here. Give it a stroke color. You can change the weight of the stroke by clicking the up arrow or clicking the drop down and choosing a thickness for the stroke there. Another way to choose color is to select a shape and then go over here where there's the fill and the stroke icon at the bottom of the toolbar, and you can then double click on the fill and you got the color picker, which gives you more flexibility in the choices you can make. but it's also more dangerous, so beware. So this slider in the middle is the hue slider, and you can drag that slider up to change color along a spectrum. So I'm in the blue area now. And then to change the value of the color, you find the circle in the top corner and drag that around. And I can have a light blue or a dark blue. And notice if I choose a color that's too intense, it's giving me an exclamation mark telling me my color is a dangerous color. It's out of range, out of gamut. That means it's not going to print accurately, or it's not going to display accurately on other people's monitors. So if I want a safer color, I can click on the exclamation mark or the swatch below to change the color for me for Illustrator to choose what Illustrator determines is the next best color. Or you can choose the next best color of yourself by just dragging the circle around till you find a color that you like that doesn't have an exclamation mark, and I can say okay. And we will continue this tomorrow. Make sure that you save your file, and make sure you go to Illustrator and quit Illustrator and log out. It's important to log out. You can click on the Creative Cloud and click sign out here to sign out. Or I believe if you just shut down the computer, it will log you out of everything. But if you want to be extra safe, just in case, you can shut down things and log things out. Give the computer, make it easier on the computer to quit out of the programs that you're in. So I'm in Acrobat now, so I can quit out of Acrobat, close things down. You can go to your account in Canvas and log out there if you want. And when you're done, you can go to the Apple and shut down. But if you have an external drive, you're going to want to eject that. So you can click on the eject button next to your external drive before you unplug it, or drag it to the trash, and the trash will become an eject button. You're not going to be throwing anything away. It's just a safe way to remove your drive so you don't damage any of your files. Okay, so thank you everyone for joining the class. That's a wrap for today. See you tomorrow for more.